Okay, hello gamers, Muckluck here. Today I am trying one of the dime a dozen deadweight DPS in Guild Wars 2. And today I attempted to learn the Power Reaper. Is it easy to learn? How effective is it? And does it bring anything else to the table if it joins a group? Let's find out. To help me on my journey, because I am not a Reaper main, I pulled up guides first on Guild Gem, because I like the way that she teaches rotations, and then on Snowcrows because their benchmarks were valuable to me. And I went through and I looked at what they did. Now, first off, the gear I ended up settling on, if you don't have the very expensive stat infusions, if you've got full Berserker's gear with one Assassin's item, that's the Assassin's Amulet, that combined with Fury will put you at 100% crit chance, which you want. So full Berserkers with an Assassin's Amulet was what we ended up doing. I tried the build with Staff Greatsword, and I tried the build with Dagger Sword Greatsword. Now, granted, this is all with my skill level. I got an immediate couple thousand DPS increase with the Dagger Sword Greatsword, so I decided to keep this. We were using Relic of the Fireworks. I tried Runes of the Scholar, and I tried Runes of the Dragon Hunter. I ended up with the exact same DPS when I tested with either one, so for me, at least, it didn't matter. Sigils of Force and Impact. Actually, this one should have been Accuracy. I think at some point in my numerous testing, I messed this up, but it was Accuracy during most of the testing. We tried a lot of different stuff. Fix that back. Okay. This is the build. If you go Staff, that's the build. If you don't go Staff, that's the build. That's it. That's the only difference. One of the websites recommended using Signet of Spite. And I honestly like this more because it's one less button to press. You just leave this up all the time. And with that, I got I think it was like 33,000 DPS when I tested on the Golem. With the other website, they recommend that you are all weaklings, which is another button to press. You hit it every time it lights up. And I got 33,000 DPS. So it was one less button to click by running the Signet. However, chat convinced me to run You Are All Weaklings because it is a stun break. Now, it's a stun break you're pressing off cooldown for damage, so it is, well, actually, I can tell you, literally not one time tonight, when I did a bunch of strikes, we did all of the daily strikes, so all of Iceberg Saga, plus the daily one in Arborstone and the daily one in the Wizard's Tower, and not one time did it happen to be available when our group got CC'd. So it is one of those things, if you're keeping it just for the stun break, it is very rarely going to be available when you need it for a stun break, unless you know that your healer is going to fail at giving you stability in the near future, which is a weird thing to count on. So after trying it, I honestly, if I was going to do it again, I would just use Signet of Spite. Got the Flesh Golem here and 2 Wells. Now, how do we play this build for people who might be interested in playing it who have never played Reaper before? Name of the game is to get in Reaper Shroud and Unga Bunga in Reaper Shroud as much as possible. So I am going to attempt to do a little demonstration here. So we start a fight, we just use a couple of our sword skills here, hit You Are All Weaklings, go into Shroud, we hit 2, and then we're just, every time we do 3 auto attacks, it shaves down the cooldown of the other things. 2 again, then 4, spin like a Beyblade, and then 1, 1, 1, and then 2 for the 3rd time, 5, and then leave that form and do other buttons out here. And then we swap to the Dagger Sword, and we're just gonna do 5, 4, 3, 2, and then 5, 4 again. And then I'm gonna use my 2 Wells before I go into this so that I'm getting combos from them. And then 2, 2, 4, which is the spin. Everybody loves the spin. 2, 5, and then we leave that, and then we just hit 5, 4, 3, 2, 5, 4, 3, 2, swap 5, 4, 3, 2, and drop the Wells again before going in, and right now we're 30k. So I'm doing a little bit worse than my best attempt. My best attempts, I was, I think 6 or 7 various tests on the Golem in a row. I got 33k, and then there was one freak attempt where I got 35, and I was not able to replicate it again. I don't know what I did on that one. So I could consistently, with less than an hour of practice on this class, pull 33,000 damage per second on the Golem. That is, of course, very different from in the encounters, but that's what I was able to do. Snowcrows, as far as their benchmarks go, the best nerd in the game on this class is able to get 42k out of it. So they bench a maximum of 42,000 damage per second. In less than an hour, I was able to get up to 33k. Now, I already had all of the gear. I did make sure to use the food and enrichment. What was it? It was sharpening stone and sweet and spicy butternut squash soup. I made sure to use both of those for this test, so I did all that. I did not have the stat infusions, and of course, I'm a noob at this. So that's what we ended up getting. It was not too bad. Additional notes: when the target gets below 50%, you can just start spamming the skill Gravedigger. That is Great Greatsword 2, it hits like a truck if the target's under half health, and it has no cooldown if they're under half health. However, it doesn't generate the juice to get you back into Reaper Shroud. So basically, if you've already used your other skills, you can just do, and like you have the juice to get into the Shroud, but you're waiting on the Shroud cooldown, you could just spam Gravedigger a few times, because it's much higher damage if the target's under half health. That's a useful thing to know. We tested the power version of the build. That's worth saying. There's a power and condi version of Reaper, and they both their benchmarks are about the same. And if you tell me like, hey, here's a condi class that does 42k and here's a power class that does 42k, which one do you want to play? I'm almost always going to pick the power one, because that means in short fights power wins and in long fights they're tied. That's just how simple it is. If the condi parses higher on benchmarks, then that means that power wins short fights, condi wins long fights. But if they're tied, then condi is rarely going to win in general. There are exceptions, notably Firebrand, because blue class. Okay, was this easy to learn? I feel like it is, yeah. I feel like it was pretty easy to learn. The main thing was just which buttons fill the Shroud bar. 5 generates life force, 3 generates life force, and then on the other one, 5 and 3 and dagger 1s generate life force. Additionally, the guides actually recommended using Blood Fiend because it does a tiny amount of damage, but I swapped to your Soul as mine just because it gives some life force when you use it. So if I made a mistake, I could use that to kind of recover a little bit. How's the CC on this build? It's pretty good. It's also easy to remember if you're new. Every single one of your weapons, and you've got 3. You've got your Greatsword, the 5 skill, and then with Dagger Sword, the 5 skill, and then with Reaper Shroud, the 5 skill. So all 3 of your weapons, the 5 is a CC. You have a few others. You're double tapping your 3 in Reaper is Fear if you hit it 2 times. Also your Golem, the Charge, which you can't activate in Shroud. You have to leave Shroud to use it, but it is a excellent CC. And I believe this is one of the CCs in the game where the larger the hitbox of the target, the more times they're hit. Because as the Golem passes through them, the fatter they are, the more blows they take before it leaves the other side. So very, very, solid skill, and it just does some very minor, like a couple hundred DPS when you're not actively using it for the CC. Miscellaneous utility. Does this bring anything to a group besides Unga and or Bunga? Yeah, some notable things is you can bring Spectral Grasp to pull in a whole bunch of mobs together. Useful on Bone Skinner and Cold War strike missions off the top of my head, but there are some others. It has CPC, or Corrosive Poison Cloud, which is similar to a Guardian Bubble. You pick an area and all projectiles are just melted in that area. So I used this today on Cosmic Observatory whenever Dagda would do her spin and would fire bullets all over the place. I attempted to use CPC to just melt all of those. Those are some of the biggest too. There's a few others that you can use in certain encounters, but those were the biggest two. I think those are the ones that probably get the most use. So you've got that. You've also got Signet of Undeath can revive someone, but I don't think a DPS Reaper is going to be bringing Signet of Undeath. Is it ranged or melee? It's full melee. How intense is it? I would say this is between low and medium intensity. There is a low intensity Reaper build out there. I would say the proper version of it is like between low to mid, but again, not too bad. Was it fun? It's all right. I mean, the spin, of course, is the biggest thing. When you do the spin, if they've got 25 stacks of Vuln, you got 25 stacks of Might, you would frequently see like over 100k on the things around you by the time the spin finished, which was fun. However, anytime you were forced out of melee range, the fun meter went way down, as this thing could not do much outside of melee. A few of your skills, like other than the dagger skills could be used outside of melee, and you could do like a little bit of damage, or you could like throw the wells, but you really needed to get back into melee range as soon as possible to be doing any respectable amount of damage. So like in our strikes today, there was one of those overpowered guys that throws the daggers, Virtuoso, in our party, and I was like neck and neck with him on all the fights, but anytime a fight then had us back away, he just shot ahead because I couldn't get in there and do any damage. They're busted though, nerf those guys, but that is how it was. That is how it was. Was there anything else? One note is when you're in Reaper Shroud, the Reaper Shroud takes the place of your hit points. So, and also your scythe disappears all the time. My scythe is gone again. So that's a thing. When you're in Reaper Shroud, your Shroud takes the place of your hit points. So if you get hit, the Reaper Shroud goes down before your health. That makes you safer than normal DPS. But a con to that is if you take too much damage, you get knocked out of your Reaper Shroud before you can finish doing your damage. So Bone Skinner, for example, he's constantly nailing the room with damage, and the typical Shroud rotation is to use Death's Charge 3 times, and then use the spin at some point in between those, and do the Executioner Scythe before you leave the form. I would often only get to do maybe 2 death charges, maybe, before I got knocked out of that form because of the Bone Skinner damage just hammering away at it. And I remember having the same problem when I tried to play Spectre. Heal or DPS versions is just getting knocked out of the Shroud and, could not do my full rotation in it. So that's just a thing. Any fight with a lot of damage, you will be safer than your average Glass Cannon DPS, but your DPS will go down the more the Shroud saves your life, because it is being used instead of powering your attacks, you're using it to survive. So that's just something to remember. I think that's about it. I made some notes of stuff that I wanted to keep track of for these things, when I'm testing these DPS, like what is the benchmark, what was I actually able to pull after spending time on it, what is the gear, was it power or condi, was it easy to learn, how much CC does it have, what is the miscellaneous utility it brings to the table, if anything, was it ranged or melee, was it intense, and was it fun? It's alright. I'll put it's alright. So yeah, that's how I felt about the DPS Reaper, and that is how you play the gist of it. If you're interested in getting into it, you never played it before. Of another worthy note for anyone who might think about playing this class, absolutely excels at just open world butchery. This class can give itself 25 stacks of might and quickness, and give enemies 25 stacks of vulnerability. Except for Alacrity and Fury, it can nearly give itself everything it gets in a raid group on its own. So when it's running around an open world, it is almost as powerful as it is when you're with a full group and they're buffing you, which is something almost no other class can say. So it is very, very good. It is a age-old build for soloing. It's been popular for a very long time for that, and that has not changed. Yeah, okay. I think that's everything. And as always, if you got any questions, problems, thoughts, concerns, or corrections you wanna point out, I welcome it. Put it in the comments down below, and I'll fight you there.